shock and joy because I didn't realize they had left space on the bottom for a sixth name, and alphabetically S is last in my group, so I thought it was going to be 5 women, so I thought, oh, Patty, great, I expect, and oh my gosh, it's me too. So yeah, on my late mother's soul, truly unexpected and shocking, such a surprise, and it felt so good because I didn't even know that was out there for me. And when I went and thought about it later, I still can't explain it why, but in a world where I think shortcuts are rewarded quite a bit, it felt like, I felt like people respect hard work sometimes, and that I've been doing this for 30 years. And not just me, a lot of people have been putting in the work. And it really felt lovely, and I've sobbed when I think about it over and over again. So I don't take it for granted. So thank you, Theater Twitter. You broke my heart in the best way.
His big note for getting married was faster. So I got to rely on that note a lot because it does actually make the song easier. You have less space in between each word, so you can breathe less, and he was right about it every single time. And also, he loved the line, "I'm the next bride," which is why I said it tonight on stage, because especially coming from the perspective of a gay man now, when this right wasn't even a right that we had in the last revival in 2006, it was so important to him that was joyful and celebrated. And at first I was playing it in a really internal way and just saying like, "I'm the next bride," and walking off quietly. And he was like, "That is not it. That is not it. You need to yell that line." So when we came back from the pandemic, I just remembered I have to yell that as joyfully and as big as possible. And that was something that I know he was thrilled about that night.
I think it was when, quite early on, he was telling me how it was all in Bobby's head, and it probably only lasted about 3 seconds, the whole thing. So that started the riff of Alice in Wonderland and the design. But I do also remember him coming into rehearsal room and seeing the box, and when everybody got into that small box of when they were singing Company, just like as you've seen on the screen, he started crying, and I thought that was the end of my career. And then he said, no, this is exactly what I had originally imagined, that it was extremely claustrophobic, all her friends. So the fact that everybody's storming into her room and crushing her in there was exactly what he'd thought of when he wrote it. So I remember that.
Oh, the first preview well, actually, there are 2, and both of them were the first previews. The first preview in London was pretty amazing because he was once he decided to let us do the show, he was very supportive of it. But I think he still wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. So at the first preview in London, he said, I'm just going to come and I'm going to be very quiet and I'm not really going to say anything, and I won't have a drink with the actors afterwards. I'll just go back to my hotel and do my notes. And then at the interval, he said, actually, would you mind if I did join you all for a drink at the end of the show? And we said, yes, of course. You are Stephen Sondheim, you can do anything you want. So, and Marianne and I did a thank you to the cast at the end for an incredible, all their hard work. And he said, could I say something? And he said, I wasn't sure about this and I didn't know how it would turn out, but this is better than I could have ever imagined, and I think it should have been done this way from the beginning. So it was incredible to see him embrace the idea. And then when we brought the show back on Broadway, after the return of Broadway, we were all masked, and it was all full of trepidation bringing back Broadway. And he was there, and it was one of the most extraordinary nights of my life. I mean, the show got 8 standing ovations that night, and he was just incredibly happy, and he couldn't have been more supportive of the production. So to have shared that night with him, which was I think only 10 days before he died, was truly an honour.
So I have been speaking to Steve Sondheim all day, to be honest, because it is quite terrifying being here and coming to the Tony Awards. I was just literally trying to channel him all day, and I kept thinking to myself, if I'm lucky enough to win, I'm just going to talk to him. And I just kept thinking about his beautiful, smiley, warm, gorgeous face, which I saw about 3 days before he died. The people that brought me along as my mentors and tutors were the Royal Exchange in Manchester, I worked there as an assistant initially, and then I stayed as an associate, and then I slowly became an artistic director with a team of them who were already there. And they seemed to see a talent in me, which I really didn't. And there was one guy there called Greg Hertzoff who really just pushed me along. So it was him. I just kept saying, be with me, and I just kept thinking about his face, and I just kept thinking, try not to be too scared, and just think about his face.
I did. I knew that this was really important to Marianne, and it was really important to Chris Harper. Chris was the first person to think of the idea and brought it to Marianne, and she said, there's no way we're going to convince him. And as you can see in those emails, he was very resistant to it at first. And I know Marianne also felt that in a really beautifully feminist production, we shouldn't lose another female role, a great classic female role. There has to be a reason behind it. And once Stephen, I think, really understood the reasoning behind this new anxiety around gay marriage and what that means for a culture that's never had that right before, and how we fit into that culture and how we fit into this heteronormative institution, that was an idea that needed to be explored, and that was an idea that could bring this piece into a fresh perspective. And I definitely feel the pressure of making sure that that is clear in our scene and exploring that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did worry that it would be endangered because everybody was stuck at home and looking at streamers. Would they ever come out again, was the question in my head. But what's extraordinary to see, particularly in London, it's starting to happen here, although we're slightly ahead in terms of COVID, probably because it started with us, but is that people seem to be going back to the theatre in their droves. They're really hungry for it. And they want an event, they want an experience. I suppose what it will change is exactly what we choose to put on, because I think people have had a really difficult 2 years, and therefore what we choose to feed them and how we nurture them will influence our choices of play and musical from now on, yeah.
Well, look, you know, I mean, I identify with Bobby very deeply. You know, I think, you know, the idea of this show came about because I found myself being a single father of twins who'd come very early. They were 10 weeks premature. So on the way to the hospital every morning, to give me courage to get through the day, I listened to Being Alive on a loop. It was the song that gave me courage. And and it was while I was listening to this song, I was thinking about, I was 45 when I decided to have my twins. So I just thought how lucky I am to be able to have children whenever it suits me. And I thought of so many of my female friends who are under so much pressure to have children at a certain age. And so it was while I was looking at my daughter, I thought, oh, who are you going to be? And Being Alive chimed in my head, and I thought, you know, we should make Bobby a woman. I thought this would be a really interesting thing. So, but it's felt like a real journey of discovery for me personally, the piece. I feel like I identify with it deeply. Yeah, it feels a very personal journey for me. So, I mean, to get it here on Broadway was just something I never dreamed about. You know, we thought, well, let's do a workshop. Maybe Stephen Sondheim will ultimately say yes to the workshop, and we'll do it in London, and wouldn't that be great? But to have it here on Broadway is just the thing that I never dreamed would happen.
I suppose the most challenging thing was the fact that we transported it to now. So they wrote it in 1969, 1970, but we decided to set it now. So that was quite challenging. But we decided that we didn't want to change much at all. That was what the kind of bar that we set ourselves. It had to exist as it was, especially George Firth's writing. So Steve Sondheim would change the odd lyric, but George Firth's writing stayed pretty much as it was. And I thought that we would either succeed or fail on that. You know, we couldn't just change George's work in order to fit what we wanted to do.
Right before we got back, I started running 5K a day because I wanted to get my breast support back, and I wanted to get back into shape because the pandemic really took a lot out of me. So for about 4 months, I think I ran 110 miles a month and got my breast support back, and that's honestly what got me back into shape for the song, because I was not ready before that time. I think what's been really fun lately is checking back in with the love that I have for Paul and really making sure that I treat him with all the kindness in the world, that I'm trying to make it a perfect day for him, but my anxiety is working against me. And it's been fun finding new colors to play with that and new points where I can reach out to Ty Benson and find just some extra bits of love so the audience knows that, of course, I love him. It's just I'm being defeated by my own hang-ups and my own fear and my own self-loathing, and that's what's hurting me and that's what's holding me back.
Well, because it's set in New York, I mean, you get a lot of things for free when you work with New York actors. Just the kind of nuance of how they'd say something, or the humor, or the dryness of the humor. Yes, it's completely different. I mean, I loved working with the English cast too, but if you were doing a show about New York, that's why we wanted to recast. So the only person that we brought from London was Patty, because it felt like it had to be, done by New Yorkers.
Well, I was that kid who, my parents took me to the theatre when I was 5 years old, and I thought, this is the thing I want. Even at that moment, age 5, I thought, this is the thing I want to do. But the most important moment was the moment that I thought I was going to have to be an actor, because I thought that was all there was to do. And when I was 11, I went to see a play in a theatre, and I saw someone pushing on the scenery. And I thought, oh, great, I don't have to be an actor anymore. I can push the scenery on. So that was a kind of light bulb moment for me. But in my whole life, I've always dreamed about being involved in the theatre and, being a producer on Broadway. It doesn't really get any better than that. So it feels like a real pinch me moment to stand here with this in front of you guys.
It's sort of overwhelming, really, to be honest. I really never imagined that I'd ever do a show on Broadway. I came to New York when I was 20, and I was having quite a bad time, and I flew to New York on the day that I should have graduated. And I was on my own, and I had a backpack, and I had one night at the Y, and that was it. And I had the most amazing summer here. It changed my life. So to be here doing a show on Broadway and doing a show about New York is in itself totally, I can't believe it. I suppose I've always struggled with insecurities and vulnerabilities, and I never imagined I could be a director because I thought all directors were men, which they were when I first started out. So I suppose it just shows that you just have to keep going, keep plowing on, and maybe eventually you'll get a job.
Sorry, I'm getting emotional. This wonderful woman named Marilyn Izdebski pulled me out of a very scared and bad place when I was a kid. And she introduced me to community theater, and she showed me that there is a community out there with like-minded individuals, and that I would find my passion, and I did. And I think right now, theater is suffering across the country right now, and it's not just Broadway struggling to come back. It's community theater, it's local theater, it's our teachers and the people that put it up in our high schools. And it's now more important than ever to keep that going and to make sure that we maintain those programs, because that's why I'm here, and I wouldn't be here without her.